Welcome to the Greenwood. I'm your host, Thaddeus Papke, and this is the podcast where we peek under the hood of the most famous outlaw who may have never been. From archaeologists to authors, we interview subject matter experts and content creators to learn why this figure continues to endure and consider what we can learn by examining what historian Maurice Keene called the matter of the Greenwood. Just last month saw the release of the book Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club, the first in a series of murder mystery novels by Jennifer Ashe. As someone who is, A, generally interested in the figure of Robin Hood, as should be evident, B, intrigued by interpretive work relating to how we respond to the legends of Robin Hood in the modern day, and C, professionally interested in murder mysteries, as I have written and produced several for museums and private functions, and will even be presenting a session on that topic at the big event in Cardiff next month, the announcement of the book immediately caught my attention. Now, on account of those first two reasons I mentioned, I had already been planning to reach out to Jenny Kane, the author of Romancing Robin Hood, a rom-com about a Robin Hood-obsessed historian finding love. Fortunately, Jennifer Ashe and Jenny Kane are both pen names for the same author, one who has turned her love of Robin Hood into a writing career that has included historical fiction, audio dramas for the much-loved Robin of Sherwood television series, and the aforementioned works of contemporary fiction that utilize the figure of Robin Hood as a vector for exploring the popular genres of romantic comedy and murder mystery. And although I did experience some admittedly self-inflicted technical difficulties, I had an absolutely wonderful conversation with Jennifer Ashe / Jenny Kane about utilizing Robin Hood in contemporary fiction and how she got involved writing in the world of the Robin of Sherwood television series. So string your bow and put on the kettle for a nice cuppa as we enter the Greenwood with an author who specializes in Robin Hood-inspired, cozy contemporary fiction, where either romance or murder might take center stage. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And for the listeners, just to come a little clean, we are repeating some of our interview here. I made a flub and was not recording the first part of our conversation here. So we will be repeating a couple of our questions here. And thank you so much for bearing with me and being willing to do this. My guest for this episode is the wonderful writer Jennifer Ashe, aka Jenny Kane, who writes under two different personas. Jennifer Ashe writing murder mysteries and medieval historical novels, and Jenny Kane, who writes cozy romance fiction. And I, in particular, would like to talk to you about how both of these come together in the form of contemporary fiction and your writing with the influence of Robin Hood. Because as Jenny Kane, you have the book Romancing Robin Hood, which is a modern rom-com with a Robin Hood-obsessed protagonist, and in the Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club that just came out, you also have a Robin Hood-obsessed academic / novelist who gets involved in a bit of a murder mystery story. So would you just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and tell us about how your two different personas came to be and how Robin Hood influences both of them?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, Jenny Kane, who I have been, if you like, Jenny Kane for longer than I have been Jennifer Ashe. Started off just writing cozy crime, cozy romance, not really thinking of involving Robin Hood. And I had a bit of minor success with that. But what I wanted to do is I really wanted to write something historical using my Robin Hood passion, which I've had since I was 14. And all the research I did when I did my PhD an embarrassing number of years ago, so that it wasn't wasted. So I wanted to find a way to combine the two. My publisher at the time was not keen for me to write historical because I was making them money writing romance books. So my editor, bless him, had a brilliant idea and said, "Why don't you write a romance about somebody who is obsessed with Robin Hood like you are?" So that's what I did. So I make no apologies for the fact that Grace Harper in Romancing Robin Hood and indeed Harry Danby in the Robin Hood Club are very based on me. They are very similar characters. And the reason for this is that I always intended to write a sequel to Romancing Robin Hood, but every time I tried, I ended up killing somebody that was around them. So obviously, I can't do that in a cozy romance situation. The Jenny Kane readers would not expect that. It's not what they want. So the obvious answer was to write a whole new set of stories. So Harry or Harriet Danby, depending on who she's talking to, was born, and so he can kill off people in the Robin Hood Club at will. Um, but not Will, obviously, because if you killed off Will, everybody'd be really cross, wouldn't they? But yeah, so the split came. The split came. So Jenny Kane will stick to being rom-commy and romancy, whereas now I have this lovely cozy angle with Jennifer Ash, where I can take my passion for Robin Hood and use it more widely whilst killing people.
Have you found that Robin Hood as a figure to bring into these sort of contemporary fiction elements in these two different genres of sort of the rom-com and the murder mystery, do you find that Robin Hood lends himself a little more easily to one or the other?
Yes, so I think it's pretty much an even split for me as a writer, obviously adapting the character. The thing with Robin Hood, of course, is he's a romantic figure to many people. And the underlying messages that come with the Robin Hood story, whether it's right from the beginning or slap up to date, is hope. And any romantic situation is filled with hope. You know, hope it lasts, hope I'll be okay, hope I don't get hurt, and all of these things. So it's more a case of using like the Robin Hood ideal when you're writing a romance. And in Romancing Robin Hood, Grace is obsessed with Robin Hood to the point where real life romance doesn't really stand a chance until she meets somebody equally as crackers as herself, and then connections start. So there's no actual Robin Hood in it. It's more of a Robin Hood obsession
Mm-hmm.
situation, which I can very much equate with. And for Harry, she also a scholar, but unlike Grace, she has left academia behind and is now just writing books with no Robin Hood in them. Her books are all about a woman called Matilda, who is very much based on Marion. So again, we haven't got the figure of Robin Hood, but we have his ideals. She is using how Robin Hood might deal with things to look at the crimes that obviously it's a mystery she is going to help solve.
Right. One of the kind of ongoing themes with these books is the sort of influence of Robin Hood, the influence on people's lives, the influence on their careers, but also as an inspirational figure, how people are writing stories that are Robin Hood stories, even though Robin Hood's not in them because what he represents is still there.
Yeah.
And as I pointed out in the bit we didn't record, I wore my "What Would Robin Hood Do" shirt because that's even a line that gets mentioned in your newest book, the Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club.
It's important. In fact, the Folville Chronicles, which is a darker crime and entirely based by one character on actual crimes that were committed by the Folville family who lived in the 14th century, the whole idea behind that was, what if that family were influenced by the ballads of Robin Hood? And I mean, that's the underlying sort of thought there. And if you think about it, we as people are often influenced by stories, by drama, something we've seen on the telly, a book we read. So
Mm,
why wouldn't that happen then?
right.
So human beings have not changed. We all love stories. We are all influenced by stories. We all become stories in the end. So, and Robin Hood particularly lends itself to that thought. I mean, it is one of the most popular, the most enduring stories of all time across the world.
Hmm.
So I'm just helping. I'm helping that along.
Something something that you mentioned before is how there's that idea of in the 14th century the stories of Robin Hood, the early ballads, were first taking form, and how those could be influential to the people at their time in ways that we don't really know. As you were just saying, now people are
Yeah.
influenced by stories. And so it's interesting to think of this time when we know those stories were being told, how they might have influenced people.
Mm.
And was that part of the inspiration for making a medieval ballad central to your new novel?
Yeah, I think so because the ballads now are important to us on two levels. One, they give us this smashing canon of stories, which we all love and have been adapted again and again and again. I can't remember the exact figure, but I think there are basically just, I think it's 42 or 43 basic storylines, and they've been adapted over 700 times in different ways. And that was when I last looked, which was 30 years ago. So there's going to be more, so
Right, right.
it's
Always more.
an evolving thing, an evolving thing. So the idea of them being a new ballad found, which is what happens in Manuscript Mysteries of the Robin Hood. Basically, the story begins where possibly original, brand new Robin Hood ballad is discovered. And of course, the story is it real? Is it fake? But the excitement that it might be real, it would create a lot of waves because it's been a very, very long time since a new Robin Hood ballad was discovered. It would have a lot of impact in the academic world. It would ripple through to the fan world because it was bound to lead to new stories, new television programs, documentaries, dramas, blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean that is definitely a thinking. And as we said earlier, it's nice to speculate on if we did find a new one, what would
Hmm.
it be about?
Right,
What would it
right.
be about? Yeah.
So, yes, just for the audience in the new book, there's sort of two central mysteries. One is this discovery of a supposed new medieval ballad, and not to get into spoilers about whether or not it turns out to be authentic. Robin Hood and the Carter as this newly discovered manuscript that appears to be, or maybe is, a new medieval ballad that was previously unknown to modern audiences and would have been known in the Middle Ages. But as we were saying, if one were to in real life discover a new medieval ballad, and and there are just a handful of what we now know to be medieval ballads and think of as medieval ballads. There's Robin Hood and the Monk, Robin Hood and the Potter, the Little Jest of Robin Hood, and Robin Hood and Guy of Gisborne sometimes gets included in there too.
Mm.
But in those, we can see the DNA of the modern figure of Robin Hood that we
Yeah.
understand. But a lot of the elements that we also know are not there. There's certainly no King Richard, there's no returning from crusades, there's questionable concepts about stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. They're certainly stealing from people. How much he
Yeah.
gives to the poor, that's a little bit debatable. Figures that like Maid Marian are not there. There isn't that romance quality to them. So the question I asked before is if an authenticated, actual in the real world, new medieval ballad of Robin Hood turned up, what would you hope to see in it?
Yeah. It's still a difficult question to answer. Um, I think where did Robin Hood come from? Who was he before he became Robin Hood? Because there are no indicators, there's no backstory provided with the original text, although obviously it has been imagined many, many times since then. But where? Where is the question? Wouldn't it be nice to have one of those early ballads that is like, yes, so he was in Sherwood, but he was also in Barnesdale, and he probably popped to Charnwood, because I am sure that any outlaw in that situation would not have stayed still. It would have been a cross geography situation. And academically, it would be lovely to not have to worry about pinning him down and having references that show that they were
Mm-hmm.
moving around. It's a survival situation.
And then also Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire could just share the figure instead of arguing over him.
Absolutely. I would love that. I would love that. I mean, they're two beautiful parts of the world. And they can both share. I'm not sure it's terribly Robin Hoody to argue about these things.
Well, one always wants to get as many of the tourism dollars as they can, I suppose.
Yes, tourism. No, I know where it comes from. It's all money.
So, was that idea of excitement that would come from the discovery of such a manuscript, the inspiration for making that a central focus for the new novel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how wonderful would that be? And not only that, I mean, obviously, I would love it if something was found, and I'd love it if I was asked to view it. It would never happen, but I would like that. It's also because, as a writer putting the story together, I needed something that could be real, that could be found in the circumstances in which I set it up, but also could be faked. It is possible. It's hard to do this sort of stuff, but there are people, unfortunately, that do fake things. So it
Mhm.
had to be possible that it might not be real, and to keep people guessing. And it also had to be something that would be sufficiently exciting for somewhere like a Robin Hood convention to want to know about it, to get involved with it. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's the setting of the new book is basically a Robin Hood convention. And you were telling me earlier that you had a lot of experience going to especially Robin of Sherwood conventions, and how that very much informed this book and the setting where the not just the discussions about this supposed new manuscript come up, but where the murder occurs as well. So hopefully, uh, there haven't been any murders at any of the conventions you've gone to, and that they're different in
It's
that
been
way.
close. I know no one's died so far. I'm gonna leave that there. So,
So
but it's a very close knit thing, so it wouldn't be hard to imagine how things could get out of hand and blow up.
now, would you say a little bit about what those conventions are like for people who have never been to one?
Yeah, sure. So with the Robin of Sherwood one specifically, obviously it is aimed at a certain group of fans, everyone that particularly likes that show. So largely it's based around fans getting together. Lots of friendships formed at these things. People only meet once a year in real life, obviously stay in touch online through Robin Hood forums, Facebook pages, and what have you. So it's big meeting of friends who all have this one passion in common. It is the chance to meet some of the stars of the show who always invited, and many kindly show up. It is a chance to listen to interviews, discussions about the show, about the legend itself sometimes, about the background to some of the actors sometimes, and you get to buy the merchandise and what have you as well. But it is largely a social event for people that are madly passionate about the show. Whereas more academic crossover conventions, which is sort of more of the tone I'm going for at the Robin Hood Club, where all things Robin Hood are considered. You still get all of that, and you get people that played Robin Hood invited along, but also there's the slightly more academic discussions. You know, what does this mean in this ballad type thing? Why is Little John portrayed in the way he is? When
Hmm.
there is very little evidence in the ballads as to what he might have looked like. But of course, we have this archetypal image now,
Right.
very tall man, rugged beard, etc., etc. Is that simply because the actors who play him are always chosen to look like that because the first actor was? And those sorts of discussions. But by and large, the feeling that you get from all of these conventions is pure love for Robin Hood in whatever form that he's been looked at on that occasion.
Now, speaking of the conventions and the closeness and the love there, in your Romancing Robin Hood book, it's of course focused on romance. It's a rom-com kind of book. In your Jennifer Ash book, the Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club, it is primarily a murder mystery, but there are romantic threads that come up with multiple characters. And so, based on that closeness, that close-knit community and the connections that people drive. You were mentioning earlier how you at least expect in the upcoming Robin Hood Club books that romance will still be in the air, even though it's not one of the Jenny Kane novels.
Yeah, I mean, there's life has romance in it. People meet, they make connections. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And these conventions, I've seen people get together. I know that some people have gone on and married partners that they have met at said conventions, be it stars or fans themselves. And the opposite is true. You see people that once got on, no longer getting on, and so forth. So it's just part of life. So I thought it wouldn't be particularly faithful to the conventions to leave all romance aside. It also adds an extra subplot of interest to the readers as well. Hopefully, they'll be rooting for certain friendships, but it's not going to be the be all and end all. Whereas Jenny Kane, you have to have something my readers expect a romantic element to run right the way through. It's got to be the main thread. With the mystery, it's very much a subplot. And in some books, it will have more importance than others, depending on the overall arc of the story. But no, it's definitely going to be a secondary thing at the Robin Hood Club compared to, say, Romance in Robin Hood.
So, one of the things we've been discussing is how much Robin Hood has become a romantic figure for us, even though that element wasn't there in the earliest stories that we're aware of. But, in this podcast, when we were reviewing various Robin Hood movies, we've started doing a ranked list of the best Robin Hoods of all time. And one of the elements that I include in particular as one of the criteria for what makes a really good Robin Hood is how much he represents a romantic ideal, which is sort of the thing that you can see with your characters, both Grace and Harriet, who have posters of Robin Hood in their offices, who they talk to, who they sometimes even treat like their significant others in their lives. That idea is really brought out in those characters about how they too view Robin Hood as a romantic figure. So my question though is, which adaptations in the modern era do you think have done the best at portraying Robin Hood as that romantic ideal that we have come to latch onto?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, I'm going to raise a flag for Robin of Sherwood. Both Michael Praed and Jason Connery definitely have that romantic ideal about them. But if we are really going to go for the romantic ideal as a specific thing, possibly in isolation to everything else, then for me, I think, bearing in mind the period in which the film was made, it would be Errol Flynn, because a lot of it, the way this film was written, was based around him being the romantic ideal. More than anything else, maybe more than any other movie, for me anyway. His relationship with Marion, brilliantly played by Olivia de Havilland, is sugar coated from the start.
Mm-hmm.
There is no question this is a romance led movie.
Yeah.
And one scene in particular where Marion is with her lady in waiting, and she's saying that she can't sleep for thinking about him, is so relatable in a romance scenario. And when you fall in love, things like that do happen. You have what she called a nice kind of not sleeping. Because you're
Right.
happy not sleeping. I mean, it's a brilliant line, and she plays it so well. So yes, for me, I think it would probably be, if we are focusing just on the romantic ideal, it would be Mr. Flynn.
Mm-hmm. On the flip side, the murder mystery side,
Yeah.
there is a murder that happens in your first Robin Hood Club book. A body is found at this convention. Will we be expecting to see more bodies in the future books? Will they all continue to be murder mysteries?
They will definitely be more deaths, because people do not like it if they read a cozy crime book, or indeed any crime book, and people don't die. I think it does say something about the human condition. We like to have deaths in our crime books. With the first one, with Manuscript Mysteries, I did toy with the idea of just having the mystery. And then I remembered something that I'd heard about Ellis Peters years ago. She wrote the Brother Cadfael books, of course, very, very successful books.
Mm-hmm.
And then in
Brilliant.
her
Oh,
11th book, An Excellent Mystery, nobody died, and people did not like it. there was actual outcry. Why isn't Brother Cadfael solving a murder? Why is he only solving a crime? And even the crime was vague. It was literally a mystery. And I remember reading it the first time, and it was a really good book, really engaging. But I was waiting for the murder right to the end, and there wasn't one. And I didn't want this sense of disappointment. So I decided, yes, somebody was going to have to die.
Hmm.
And book two is in production, as they say, as it's called, Mayday Murders at the Robin Hood Club. I think we can guess that somebody's going to be dispatched.
Right, right. Yeah, it certainly affects those audience expectations. And it's really interesting because this coincides with this discussion I had earlier this week where I was talking to somebody else who engages in museum education and formal education like I do. And we were discussing for an upcoming session at a conference about doing how adult engagement events are run and the popularity of murder mystery events. And I've run several of these for private events. I've run them for a couple of different museums I've worked for. And the person I was conferencing with has run these sort of CSI themed events here in the UK and found that they were just less popular if the mystery wasn't surrounding a murder.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, she got her feedback from her audience. They looked at the numbers, they looked at the engagement levels, and they just notably dipped. And in order to keep people coming back, you have to keep dropping bodies somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it raises the stakes. It gives the audience something to hope for, to try and work out themselves. People like a puzzle. So I'm sure that's part of it. But if the stakes are higher, there's more engagement in what you're doing, if it's like a murder mystery thing or reading the book or whatever. And there's the hope thing, hope it's going to be okay, which brings us, of course, back to Robin Hood, where hope is very much that the runner through all of the stories, whether
Mhm.
it's from then or from now.
Yeah, and I think it's also just more satisfying to catch a
Yeah,
killer and or get to see a
absolutely.
killer caught. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have a couple of questions that come from Emily Rich, who's a friend of the show. She asked these questions on the Discord channel that is run by another friend of the show, Mike Nichols. One of the things that she asked was she mentioned how when reading Romancing Robin Hood, one of her favorite aspects was catching all of the Easter eggs and references that related to Robin Hood that were layered throughout it. And she wanted to know what references are you the most excited to include when writing your contemporary books about Robin Hood nerds?
Right. Okay. So, total disclosure here. I had no idea I was doing it. I did not know when I was writing Romance in Robin Hood and indeed the Robin Hood Club that I was planting Easter egg. I was literally just writing the book. And it's only after writing both of them that others have said, "Oh, did you know you'd included this? And there was this, and I like this Easter egg." And I was just unaware. I was literally just writing it, and I think it's because my knowledge of Robin Hood stuff, if you like,
Hmm.
is so wide, and I'm just like putting in what I like. So all the little references are going to be things to which I really like, or I really don't like, such as the Russell Crowe film, which I cannot stand. But that's just personal. But yeah, I honestly didn't know I was doing it. I like to put little references in to scenes that I like, particularly in the Robin of Sherwood, which is so seminal to me, just because they make me smile, and I want to make other people that love it see them, and then people that don't understand aren't going to wonder, what that's about. I'm not going to like mislead people with being too obvious. Well, I
Can
was
you
obviously not obvious because I didn't know I'd done it.
can you provide an example of some of those favorite scenes that you like to
Oh,
do callbacks to?
oh, okay. I'm just trying to. Right, yes. So this one, in fact, this example, the first one that comes to my mind is actually from the Folville Chronicles, where I have naughtily Easter egged. And it's the first time I actually did it on purpose. There is a scene where Robert Folville, who is the lead male character in the Folville characters, gives Matilda, who is the lead protagonist, the fact that she is called Matilda and it's Matilda of Sherwood is both a nod to Marion and no overlap there. and he gives her a Byzantine green silk dress because it matches her eyes. And that is almost exactly what Jason Connery's Robin says to Marion when King John gives Marion a Byzantine green
Hmm.
silk dress. And I did that, and I was very careful so I didn't copyright, change things around. But yes, that was the one time I knowingly did it. I wrote it, and then I realized what I'd done, and I made sure that I hadn't sort of like plagiarized Mr. Carpenter. But yes, that's probably the easiest example to share.
Emily also wanted to ask how, when you're writing these books that are so tailored for Robin Hood fandom, who do you think of as your primary audience?
Nutters like me, really. I mean, I'm yeah, people like me, people that love Robin Hood, but also like to read as a whole. So obviously, I have to, imagine a world where there might be people that don't like Robin Hood, which is very strange. Mostly, it is the audience that grew up with Robin of Sherwood, having, been privileged enough to meet so many people that are, really super fans of this stuff. They are all in their 40s and 50s, but I am writing to their inner 14-year-old, to the person they were when they first fell in love with the legend. And I think that bears true for all of us. Most people fell in love with the legend of Robin Hood as a child. Not
Hmm.
always, but the majority. So you need to pitch to an adult audience, but nurture their nostalgia and their inner child. That is the audience aim that I have.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. The primary audience being the inner child of people who grew up with Robin Hood.
Yeah,
And it's a really good point. All of the people I know who are the biggest fans of Robin Hood really latched onto it in some way when they were young and through different adaptations. For some, it was Robin of Sherwood. For
yeah,
some, it was the Disney Robin Hood cartoon that led them
wonderful.
to
Yeah,
making their own little bows and playing in the backyard.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that.
And in my case, it was the Errol Flynn film because my uncle gave me a copy of it when I was very young, and I watched it over and over again.
Fun,
So,
fantastic movie. Yeah, it's funny you say the watch it over and over again. I didn't come into Robin of Sherwood till the third series. I'd not come across it. It was televised over here at the same time as Doctor Who. So you had Doctor Who on BBC One, you had Robin of Sherwood on ITV. No such thing as videos back then. We couldn't afford one of those, so it was one or the other. And we were a Doctor Who family. And it was only because when I was 14, I was really ill. I was off school for a long, long time. I was very bored, and my father went and rented a video recorder so that I could watch television during the day when everybody was at work, because there was no daytime television. And to test the video recorder, we just recorded the first thing that was on, and it was an episode of Robin of Sherwood. And I watched that episode 9 times the following day,
wow.
9 times in one day. I can still quote the episode because I watched it so many times. And for a week, I must have watched that episode every day, at least 3 times a day.
So which episode was it?
That was Adam Bell.
I was wondering because you'd mentioned the third series, and
Mm,
that is
yeah,
that is such a good one. That is one of the episodes that I'm planning on covering
yeah,
later this year. We don't have the space to do a review for every episode, but
yeah.
to make sure we get Jason Connery in there. And if I had to pick one from his era, that was the one that I had picked.
It's superb. Anthony Horowitz wrote that when he was 19 years old.
Wow.
19 years old. First thing he wrote for television.
I
And it came in pure chance. He had written an episode just for fun and sent it in to ITV, and they were down an episode and took it.
That's stunning. Good
Luck
for him.
is a massive thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, he's a brilliant writer,
Well,
fantastic.
and that transitions perfectly to my next question which is how did you get involved with writing stories for Robin of Sherwood?
Well, I had my own stroke of luck. Not the same as his, obviously, but far off, really. I was very fortunate. So I'd just written Romancing Robin Hood. It was being advertised on Facebook. And just by pure luck, a chap called Barnaby Eden Jones happened to see the advert. And at that time, he was helping get the cast together for the audio recording of Knights of the Apocalypse, which was the final episode that Richard Carpenter wrote. But of course, it was never televised. It never came to television. So they decided to make it into an audio. All the cast got together, which is wonderful. So Barnaby got in touch with me and said, "We have a convention. Would you like to come and sell your book?" I was very nervous, but I said yes, and off I went, terrified, knowing no one, with my one Robin Hood related book, thinking, no one's going to
Mhm.
come, no one's going to buy this. Um, Honestly, it was the most amazing experience. I was very nervous because I knew I was going to meet the cast, the people that had changed my life. If I hadn't seen that episode of Adam Bell, I doubt if I would have gone on to study Robin Hood. I doubt if I'd gone on to do my PhD, etc., etc. So being there, having a chance to say thank you was very important to me. So I got there and set up, very nervous. And the first person that came to my table was Jason Connery. It was
Wow.
very, very sweet. And he came
Nice.
up to my table, and I was so nervous. I was shaking because I'm incredibly shy, especially in a social scenario. And I didn't know who it was. It was just the shadow comes. So I look up, and the first person I see is Jason, who's so like his father. It's amazing. And he just said, "I hear this is all my fault." And I wish I'd said something witty, but I didn't. I would just like something like yes or something really. And then he bought a book, and the first book I signed was for Jason,
Oh,
which was
wow.
incredibly kind of him because it really settled my nerves. Get me in, and he didn't need to do that. And it was a really, really sweet thing to do.
And
Anyway, so the
he
convention,
gets a call out at the very beginning of that book too. So that must have been nice
yes,
for him
yeah,
to
he
see.
really does. I don't know if he ever read it, but I appreciated the gesture because it really helped. Oh my goodness. So while I was there, everyone was really nice. And I was invited to the premiere of Knights of the Apocalypse, which was an audio premiere in London. So again, rather nervously, knowing a few people, but obviously still being on my own, up I went. Spoke to a lot of people, just randomly, not knowing that I was actually being sort of interviewed to see if I was up to the task of maybe writing an audio. And then a few weeks later, I was emailed and asked, "Would you like to have a stab at writing one?" We've got an extension on the license. We're going to do a few episodes. At the time, it was literally just going to be half a dozen. There weren't going to be any more. So feeling like a child at Christmas, I'm like, yay! So they said, "Would you write a treatment?" And I didn't know what that was, so I pretended I did and say, "Yes, of course I will." Went home, Googled what a treatment was, made up a story, which I have to say took me seconds because Robin of Sherwood stories have lived in my head so often. They were so well written. The characters just write themselves because Richard Carpenter does such a good job. So I had a go. Didn't hear anything for ages. Thought, nothing's happened. Fair enough. I've enjoyed the process. Then I got an email saying, "Yes, we want it. Can you do this to it?" Lots of back and forwarding for about a year. And then suddenly they said, "Okay, so this is going to be called The Waterford Boy. We'd like you to write it for Judy Trott to narrate." She was Marion, of course. And there we are. So 10 years later.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
So, if anybody wants to find either your Robin of Sherwood stories, your Romancing Robin Hood book, the Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club, or any of your other books, where can they find them?
Right. Okay. So for the Robin of Sherwood stuff, the best place to go is auklimited.com because they've just bought out the latest thing, which is Tales Untold, which is a series of short stories that I wrote about side characters for the story. So that's just come out. So that's where you go for that. And the majority of the other Robin of Sherwood spin-off audios and books. Otherwise, you can try Chin Beard Books. They're on there as well. And if you follow me on Facebook, I'm all over the place as Jennifer Ash and Jenny Kane. You can find all the information there. Otherwise, my website is the best place to find me, which is jennykane.co.uk. And that has Jennifer Ash on it as well.
And for people who have already devoured the Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club, when can they expect to see the Mayday murder?
Oh my goodness. Well, you see, this is the problem, isn't it? It's going to be a little while because, as you're saying, this is the 40th anniversary year of Robin of Sherwood. So there is lots going on. It is also the year where the license for writing Robin of Sherwood comes to an end, a fitting time for it
Hmm.
to finish. So I have quite a few Robin of Sherwood things that need doing first.
Got a tight
They have to
timeline
take
there.
priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. So watch this space. There will be more nice things to come, and I can tell you that there will be a Tales Untold 2 for those
Hmm.
that like Tales Untold 1. It will be coming. I'm working on that at the moment. I'm hoping it will be done by the end of the year. But obviously, I also have to write a Jenny Kane book at the same time, and I also teach, and I have another job as well. So I'm going as fast as I can. But it is 3 chapters in, and it'll be about the same length as that one. So I'm hoping not too long. But by the end of the year, fingers crossed.
Yes. Well, best of luck to you getting all of those
Thank
out.
you.
I've got a lot of faith in you. You managed to put out a good quantity already.
Thank you.
So there's lots for people to read already out there if they have not
Oh,
already picked up your
heaps.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on this call. Thank you so much for bearing with me with our technical issues. I really
Not a
appreciate it
problem.
so much.
It's okay. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, and I hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
All right. Cheers. My thanks again to Jennifer Ash / Jenny Kane for joining me to discuss her works, including Manuscript Mysteries at the Robin Hood Club, which is available now in print or as an ebook. To find out more, you can go to jennykane.co.uk. Links are, of course, in the episode description. If you've read any of her books, or have any thoughts about what you'd like to see in the text of a newly discovered medieval Robin Hood ballad, or just any general thoughts you'd like to share about Robin Hood fiction, be it historical, contemporary, romantic, mysterious, or otherwise, please feel free to get in touch. You can find Into the Greenwood on most of the major social media platforms, including the site formerly known as Twitter, as well as Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook, all with the handle @IntoGreenwood. You can also reach out directly via email with the address intogreenwood@gmail.com. There is also an active Discord server for all things Robin Hood related, run by friend of the show Mike Nichols. If you'd like to join that Discord community where we source questions, organize watch parties, play games, have a book club, and just generally engage in friendly discussion, then reach out over email or social media to get an invitation. Into the Greenwood is supported by our amazing and generous followers on Patreon. At patreon.com/intogreenwood, you can follow for absolutely free or contribute as little as $1 a month to help pay for our hosting fees. Patrons at the Merry Bandit and Notorious Outlaw levels also get bonus content that can include extended interview segments and other special audio exclusives. Even a free t-shirt. If you're willing to make a small one-time contribution towards keeping Into the Greenwood on the air, we also have an account on buymeacoffee.com/intogreenwood. And since this whole project is inspired by a forest hero who has become associated with charitable work, no matter how much or how little is contributed to keeping this podcast running, a minimum of 10% of all proceeds will be donated to a select charity. At this time, that charity remains Trees, Water, and People, a top-rated charity dedicated to establishing sustainable access to food and clean water for impoverished communities around the world. If you're feeling a bit impoverished yourself, a positive rating or review, or just sharing a favorite episode or two, would do wonders for helping others to find the show. As a small independent podcast amid thousands of options out there, It's a real challenge for our little show to break through and gain listeners, so every single rating or share makes a significant impact. Into the Greenwood is produced and edited by me, Thaddeus Papke. Our theme music is by Plastic 3. That's all for now, though, so once again, I find myself wishing safe travels to you, one and all, until our next journey together into the Greenwood.